It doesn't matter how old your home is. It doesn't matter where you live. Okay? If you have something like that going on, you leave and you come back and you feel worse, something's going on in your home. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Jacque Show. I have been getting a lot of comments, a lot of questions when it comes to the topic of mold. So I figured let's just keep adding to this mold series. And if you're like, well, I have questions on this too, do the same thing that everyone else has been doing. Either answer to a question that I had in the stories or just direct message me if you have questions for mold. Now, mold is something that I was trying to get away from in a way that, you know, mold is very emotional for the person. It's very emotional for me as well. I'm an empath just naturally. That's just how I am. So when I know people are going through a moldy situation, I've been there. I can actually physically put myself back where I used to say that my brain wasn't functioning at 100%. I had no sex drive. I had horrific irritable bowel. I had no brain function like at all. Like I would literally say my brain's not functioning at 100%. And so we're going to be educating as much as we can, by we, I mean me, on this topic. And I want this to be a team effort. So if you're listening to this podcast, find me on doc_Jacque on Instagram and let me know that you listened to it. And let me know if you have any questions at all. And I'll make a specific episode specifically for you if that's something that you want. Now let's get into it. So why has this been a lot more prevalent now? Well, what I have been noticing is throughout the summer months, okay, people are more likely to be going places, doing vacations, going out of country, whatever that might be for them, but they're getting out of their home, okay? And so we'll have either people who have not come to me yet or people who have been with me for a while, right? We'll just do that one. You've been with me for a while, you're doing great, and then you leave the home for about a week. You come back and you feel crummy. While you're away, you felt fantastic. You came back home, you felt horrible. Okay, and I'm not talking about jet lag and fatigue and those types of things. I'm saying if you've got rashes, horrible headaches, migraines, irregular cycles, right? Your kids are acting up. You've been gone, you came away. This is what I call the vacation test. It's not very scientific in that it's a term I made up. I think it's very accurate for describing the situation. But what does it actually mean? There are free ways in a way to test yourself, to test your home, to see if mold may be a threat for you. Okay, so if you're like, well, I don't know if I have mold, or you can't pinpoint and say, you know, I started having miscarriages or irregular cycles, or I had irritable bowel and horrible candida overgrowth ever since I moved into this home. Or it's like, oh, it's like 5 years ago. And then you're like, well, what happened 5 years ago? And you're like, oh, I moved into a new house. Right? Those are some more obvious ones where the home is a threat to you. And it could be mold, it could be a gas leak, could be both. But more often than not, it's going to be mold. Okay? And this, I'm probably going to say it on every single episode of this series, is that this is not just specific for humid climates. Cannot stress that enough. Even if you live in Arizona, you can still get mold in your home. It's harder because of the lack of humidity outside and the intense heat will dry out the wood quicker. But if you've got a pipe that's burst behind a wall, it doesn't matter where you live. The home is getting soaked. Okay? So the vacation test is a very easy and useful tool for you. If you're like, I don't know if that's necessarily a thing. Or if you're like, I've been to all these doctors before. Nobody can find out what is wrong with me. I've got 1,000 different symptoms going on. I've got autoimmunity, miscarriages, infertility, rashes, whatever it might be. And then you're like, well, maybe I can do this vacation test, right? Go stay with your parents for a week, or go rent an Airbnb for a week, or do an extended stay, or go somewhere else that you can pretty much guarantee is not going to have mold, right? Don't just go and like hang out in someone's basement because, there might be a risk that there's mold down there. Go somewhere where you know it's going to be clean and good to go. Just go on a vacation, right? I know times are tough, so I don't want you to think that, just spend more money. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're trying to figure out if your house has mold, this is a really easy way to figure it out, okay? It doesn't have to be a whole week. It could be 3 days. I've had patients that have left over the weekend. They'll go on a camping trip. Right? It costs you $10, maybe $30 for $10 a day up north in Flagstaff. I know it's like $10 to do a tent camp in a campsite. And so $30, right? Cheaper than a mold test. It's not as clinically accurate, but it's still a good sign that if you go away and you're in the woods and you're feeling great, right? Sleeping on the floor, you have more energy, you don't have headaches, right? And you're waking up feeling rested, and then you go back to your home and you feel horrible. Like, dude, you're just sleeping on rocks with the threat of a bear attacking you. And you're like, cool, that was comfortable, that was peaceful. But in my house, not so much. So 3 days can be enough time for you to be out of the home, for you to then be able to come back and almost instantly. Some people it's instant, some people it takes some time, but almost instantly you're going to get a headache. You'll have sore throat. You'll wake up with, my patients will say it'll feel like somebody, like a cat, took a dump in your mouth. Pretty gross, I know, but that's what they'll tell me, right? You'll have all these symptoms that start to compile, and you're like, this doesn't add up. Something weird is going on. I just got back from vacation, or I just got back from camping, or I just got back from roughing it, or just being on the road, and you come back and poof, you feel horrible. Something is going on in that house, okay? What happens? There's a whole bunch of terms for it, and I have them written down because some of them are actually kind of cool. But you get this state of desensitization with the fragrance of your home. Okay, they'll call it like olfactory adaptation, olfactory fatigue. Nose blindness was a fun one, right? What does that mean? That means if you're in the environment for an extended period of time, okay, you're not going to be able to smell what's going on in the home. So that's another thing. If you leave, you come back into the house, you're like, something smells kind of mildewy. It smells kind of moldy in here. This smells, like something smells bad in this house, right? Like I've never smelled this before. Is it the trash? Is it the dishwasher? Is it the garbage disposal? What's going on? If you're smelling that, then you've been desensitized to it. It's just like seeing an old lady in Macy's. I'm going to say Macy's because it's always like that, where an old lady will walk past you and you're like, oh, good Lord, how many sprays of perfume did this person put on themselves? Like, are you kidding me? Or you'll go through and they'll spray the crap out of you in Macy's without even asking your permission. They'll spray you and you're like, oh, it's in my nose. It's burning. Like it smells like like somebody shoved roses up my nose. Like it's gross. And you're like, this is never going to get out of my nose. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, okay, like what's up? You don't smell it anymore, right? You get used to it. Or the old lady, they're so nose blind to that fragrance that they have to put on an extra amount so that they can even smell it. That's repeated exposure to it. Okay, so if you're thinking like, well, my house doesn't smell bad, right? I've smelled cars. I was driving down a 303 the other day. My nose is apparently legendary, according to myself. I was driving down a 303. I was coming back from picking up the dogs, and I'm driving with the windows down because it's 95, and in Arizona, 95 is like a 70-degree day in Pittsburgh. But I'm driving down the road, and I'm like, this is a really nice day. And then a truck hauls past me. And I'm like, ooh, mold. The whole truck smelled like mold. And I did a test. I let him go away. Then I caught up to him, smelled it again, let him go away, caught up to him again, smelled it again. Like, holy cow. Right? Because if we think about it, again, even in Arizona, if we park our vehicles, if we park our couches, if we park our mattress, if we put anything within an environment that has mold in it, mold will grow on that surface. Okay, yes, it requires mold, but mold spores can come down and fall onto the car and be surrounded by mold. And then if you drive your car, you turn on the AC, hopefully you have filters, you replace your cabin air filter and those things, but you can be pulling mold spores into the car, or it gets into the fabric, it gets into the seat, and it smells horribly. Okay. So if you're suspicious, if you're like, I don't know about this stuff, do that test, do the vacation test. And again, it doesn't matter how old your home is. It doesn't matter where you live. Okay. If you have something like that going on, you leave and you come back and you feel worse, something's going on in your home. And what I would tell you to do is run an ERMI test, run an ERMI test analysis on it and figure out if there is mold, how much is there, is it safe to be in, and then follow up on step 2, which is going to be the next episode, is how do you find somebody to come and inspect the home? It's the hardest part. Okay, so I just want to do a quick little blurb, if you will, on this vacation test, but it is something that's hugely important. And I've experienced this where, whether it's mold or it's, another example for nose blindness is people who smoke cigarettes and they smoke inside the house. And I don't know if anybody does this anymore, but I remember having friends growing up where they would come out of the home, parents chain smoked in the home, and you'd give them a hug or whatever. Like, oh man, it smells like cigarettes, like all over. But the kid couldn't smell it at all. Like, I don't smell anything. I think I smell good. Like, you might want to wash those clothes or go douse yourself. And back then, Axe body spray or something to just like cover that scent up. Right. So the same thing can happen with mold. So again, if you are curious or if you're not quite sure, you don't feel quite right since moving into whatever home you're in or apartment you're in or condo or townhome, wherever you live, doing this test can be a huge help to you to get you the right help so that you can get your true outcome, which is abundant health. We're all here to live to our fullest potential. Don't be naive. Don't be naive thinking that this can't happen to you. It doesn't happen to your home. It can't happen to you. It's a brand new home. It's an old home where I just renovated it. It can happen all day, every day. I have seen mold come from air conditioning units on top of a home. I've seen it from pipe bursts. I've seen it from water softener leaking in the garage. I've seen it from bath leaking. I've seen it from faucets that are dripping down and ruining the cabinets, or in a kitchen island where the water is going through and the top of the faucet isn't fastened properly and water runs back down and drops it down into the lower compartment and breeds mold down there. It can grow. If you give mold an inch, it will take a mile, guaranteed, every single time. All right. So try the vacation test. Let me know how it works for you. Next episode, we're going to be going into how to find a mold remediation company, and that's going to be a longer episode. But thanks for tuning in, y'all, and we'll talk next time.